coming out today and giving us an opportunity to talk to you about our candidacy. Isn't it wonderful to be able to have a number of candidates instead of just one person to choose from? And so that's something that we haven't had here in the state of Kansas. But just going to give you a little information about who I am. My name is Carl Brewer, and for some of those, if the name sounds familiar, I was a former mayor in the city of Wichita, was a two-term mayor that was there during the first worst recession in the history of the country. And so I had an opportunity to be able to represent the city of Kansas, but not only that, I was president of Kansas League Municipalities. I've been married to my wife for 38 years. My grandchildren, I have a total of 4 children, 13 grandchildren, so you know, certainly in the educational system, I have a huge investment in that particular area there. I come from corporate America. I retired from Spirit Aerosystems. I started out as a sheet metal mechanic, worked my way up to become a manager there in that particular area. Served my country, served in the military, like some of the other candidates that are here. But the one thing that I did learn as I progressed that made me decide that I want to get involved is nobody was listening to us and everyone had forgotten about us as citizens. And I was a big proponent of making sure that we did that when I was mayor of the city of Wichita. I was interested in making sure that I truly represented the people that elected me to office, but then taking it a step farther, listen to them, and they were part of the solution to the problems. And they knew how we were actually doing. And we've gotten away from that. Right now, we have an environment where individuals are telling us, this is the way that you're going to live your life, these are the things that you can do, and oh, by the way, we want you to be successful, but we're going to tie your hands and we're going to blindfold you and not allow you to do it. We've got to get away from that. We've got to create a government that allows us to be able to address those issues. We have a host of issues here in the state of Kansas that we need to have repaired. The state has been financially strapped, broken. We've taken money from the transportation fund. We've taken a step farther. We need education that we need to make sure that we fully fund it and fund it appropriately. Healthcare, we have individuals that are going around without healthcare and no type of way to be able to get preventive medicine or to even get medication when they do have been diagnosed with different things. And so we've done things, we've allowed individuals to allow their egos to get in the way when they can actually help us, but because they decide they don't like a particular person, then they reject the money and the opportunity to be able to help us in each and every one of our communities. But as we start looking at that, as you know, I've always been a big proponent of economic development and growing our communities and making sure that we had good quality jobs, adequate jobs, and that everyone had an opportunity. And I believe that it's important that we continue that work in what we're doing, but not only that, but start looking at diversifying of what we are. Let's start moving away somewhat from the agriculture and start doing and the manufacturing that we've primarily been focusing on. Let's get away from those particular things. Let's create an environment where everyone has an opportunity to have a voice in the state of Kansas. And so I believe that it's important to be able to do that, and that's why Carl Brewer is running for governor, and I look forward to answering any more of your questions.
Hi, I'm Laura Kelly. I am a state senator, also a wife and a mother, and a very proud daughter. I grew up in a military family. My dad was career Army, so we traveled all over the world. In fact, by the time I was 6, I had lived on 3 continents, including in Japan. And Japanese was actually my very first language. And I regret today that there's but one word I remember, and that is yakamashi. And it means shut up. And I think I remember that because I had an older brother and an older sister, and I'm guessing that day in and day out, that's what I heard from them. So we kept moving. By the time I was 15, I'd lived in at least 12 places and gone to, I can't count the number of schools. So when I met and married my husband, Ted, we were actually living in Denver at the time, and we decided that what we wanted to do was to really set down some very deep roots and raise our children in one place. So we looked all around, and we chose Kansas. And we chose Kansas for 2 primary reasons. One, because of a very, very deep sense of community you find in Kansas like no other place. But also, the stellar public school system was a big draw for us. And it worked. You know, both of my daughters got a world-class education taught by some absolutely fabulous teachers. And that is exactly why I'm running for governor, because I want those same opportunities my daughters, my family had when we moved here 32 years ago, for every Kansas family, for every Kansas kid. You know, I don't think I'm going to tell any of you in this room anything new when I tell you that it's been a rough 8 years in Kansas. We have been through really the dismantling of our state in many ways, the decimation of our schools, and I think damage to the actual core of our communities. And I think at this point in Kansas history, what Kansas needs is a strong, experienced, steady governor to get us back on track. And that's what I will bring to the office. I've got 14 years experience in the state senate, 12 of those as the ranking minority member on the budget committee, the Senate Ways and Means Committee. So I know Kansas government inside and out. I know where the problems are, and I know how to fix them. And I've also got the relationships that will be necessary to be able to move forward an agenda. You know, anybody who thinks that the governor can go in and dictate what's going to happen, wrong. It really does take working together with the legislature to get good common sense policy into this state. So for 14 years, I have worked across the aisle, and I've established deep, broad, very trusting relationships with my moderate Republican friends. You know, I was a math major going into college, so the least I could do is count. And when I came into the Senate, the entire time I've been in the Senate, we've never had more than 10 Democrats in a 40-person Senate. So, and it takes 21 votes to pass anything. So I knew I had to reach across the aisle, and I did that very successfully. I will be able to do that in the governor's office.
Good evening, I'm Joshua Swati. You know, one of the fun things when you have so many candidates, it's kind of like when you fly to China over the Pacific Ocean, you don't realize this, you've actually crossed the international date line during our presentations. It's now Friday morning. You're going to walk out, we're going to all have pancakes together. Thank you for your patience. There's a lot of us up here, and there's 3 more to go after me, so this is important. So I appreciate you coming out. I want to give a shout out to the city, the Chamber of Commerce and Farm Bureau for putting this together. I also want to give a shout out to your local state elected representative, Mary Martha Good. She's actually a Republican. She does a great job. She's here this evening, so you should make sure you talk to her as well. But I want to say thank you as well for having these. I'm from Ellsworth originally. My family's been farming there since 1864. I have my own farm there. I am a dryland farmer. A lot of people sometimes say, oh, that's so great that you chose to be a dryland farmer. I'm not a dryland farmer by choice. There is no water underneath me, so that's just the way it is. But I have served in the state legislature for 7 years. I was Secretary of Agriculture in the Parkinson administration. I was a senior advisor at the Environmental Protection Agency, then worked at the Land Institute, which is an ag research organization south of Salina, and then began building my own farm operation during that time. I decided to get back into politics and get into this race because I realized that this is a change election, and the 2018 election cycle is important for the state of Kansas. We must move forward. We must present to both ourselves and the rest of the country that we are a state willing to invest in our future, and it's not enough simply to say we're going to do that, but we have to do that with individuals that represent the future of the state of Kansas. I did that by virtue of the fact that I'm 38, but I have 16 years of experience working in and around government, but also in my choice of lieutenant governor, I have selected Katrina Lewison. She is originally from Hutchinson. She's a West Point graduate. She flew Black Hawk helicopters in the Iraq War. She came back. She's a Purple Heart recipient, taught cadets at West Point, and then she and her husband chose to move back to the state of Kansas. She lives in Manhattan. She's on the school board there. She helps run a software company, and her husband helps run a clothing company there in Manhattan, Kansas. She and I both represent the future of the state of Kansas. She and her husband have 3 children. My wife Kimberly and I have 4, and each and every day we look at those children and say, how can we present and build a better future for the state of Kansas than what we had before? So we campaign hard. I'm the only candidate that is officially campaign in all 105 counties around the state of Kansas. That takes a long time, and as a Democrat, that is an abnormal thing to do. There are not a lot of Democratic votes in western Kansas, but as an individual that comes from, I consider it central Kansas, but a lot of people see it as western Kansas, I firmly believe that any statewide elected official needs to be out and among everyone across the state, and particularly as a Democrat, we have to make sure that we are listening to everyone. So again, thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the evening.
You know, we've for decades had discussions about property taxes here in the state of Kansas, and everyone has had a strategy and a plan that we need to get rid of property taxes. Well, the bottom line is until we get it figured out and come up with a different system, that's not going to happen, because Kansas is primarily focused on agriculture, manufacturing, and property taxes. That's the only structure we have in place to pay our bills. So they're going to continue to take those. The thing is, we have to come up with a strategy and a plan to be able to do that. Now, the other portion is that some people may not be paying as much as others, and we have to create an environment where we have a fair and an equitable process, as opposed to the few paying the taxes for everyone. So in doing that, that's one of the strategies that we must do, in being able to make sure that everyone has a fair and equitable way, but diversify what we actually have. You heard them talk about increasing tourism. You heard them talk about increasing trade and export. We've got to create an environment where we have a positive way of being able to do that and generate additional revenue, and we can eliminate property tax.
When I become governor, one of the first things that I will do is bring together experts in the field of taxes and economics and try to find a path back to what we had when Bill Graves was governor of Kansas in the early 90s. That three-legged stool approach, where you have a third property tax, a third income tax, and a third sales tax. That was balanced. It worked for Kansas because we don't have extraordinary revenue sources like Texas and California and Florida. So we'll do that. The other thing that when we are economically healthy enough to do this, I want to revisit the city-county revenue sharing programs that used to be in place, which allowed the state government to put money back into our cities and counties to help them keep a lid on property taxes.
I hear you. My own property taxes went up 20% on my farm last year, and like most farmers, we've got cash flow problems right now. It's tough. There's not a lot of money moving through the system, and so it is a serious problem. But it's about the state government being a true partner with your local units of government. There's another question that you proposed, I think, potentially down the line, talking about the community college here in Butler County. These are important institutions, and the concern within the county is if the state is not providing any support whatsoever to that community college, then it ends up on the backs of the local property taxpayers here in the county. And so you've got to have a governor that understands that. It's not simply about talking about lower property taxes. When the state is not doing its share, it ends up being higher property taxes. And so we do need to get back to even the mid-2000s, when the state was still making its commitment on the LABTR, which is the local ad valorem tax reduction fund, part of sending those dollars back to the local counties to help with local property taxes. And we've moved so far away from that, you're seeing those year-to-year increases on valuations.
Okay, to answer your question, is I support expanded Medicaid. And I support it because I come from a community that I see a lot of individuals that needed preventive medicine. And also, as I've traveled this entire state, there's not that much difference whether you come from rural communities or whether you come from urban communities, of the needs and the wants to be able to get medical treatment and also preventive medical treatment. So I certainly support it. And I know here in Kansas, we've made some mistakes here in previous leadership where we've sent money back because of personal differences. But the thing is, if it's something that can help each and every one of the communities here, because it only requires one incident that you can become financially broke and you need that type of expanded Medicaid. So I want to make sure that my ego is not so large that I would be out there collecting whatever it can to be able to make sure that each and every one of you and your children and senior citizens are all healthy here in the state of Kansas. That's one of the things I make for a promise here as governor.
I have fought for Medicaid expansion since the day we were eligible to get it. It's the dumbest thing the state of Kansas has ever done to not expand it. We have left over $2.6 billion, Kansas dollars, back in Washington, D.C. to be distributed to other states for them to provide access to health care for their citizens and them to grow their economies. Last year, Louisiana finally expanded Medicaid. In 1 year, they saw $317 million in savings, and they created 19,000 jobs. We have a duty to the citizens of Kansas and our communities to expand Medicaid and help our students, help our communities, help our patients, and help just the entire state economically. Thank you.
I would have expanded it. One, there are tax dollars in the first place, so of course we should take advantage of them. Two, we're going to have to tease out where we are in the numbers, because I've actually heard that 87% of the Medicaid expansion dollars would be going to children and seniors, so they're not really eligible to be in the workforce. And then of the remaining 13% of those dollars, a lot of them are working 30 or sometimes 40 hours a week in minimum wage jobs. They simply don't qualify, or they do qualify, for Medicaid. And it is about making sure that providers are appropriately compensated for work that they are largely going to do anyway, because they're good members of their community and they're going to serve those people. But if they have an opportunity to be compensated for that, they should be. And then finally, the one other thing I would add, it's been said a couple of times this evening that the state is spending twice as much as it's bringing in. I just want to make sure you understand the state can't deficit spend like the federal government. We only spend what we bring in. And one of the reasons our budget looks twice as high as our tax revenues is that our total budget includes a lot of fee services that come in. When I ran the State Department of Agriculture, we were split between monies that we got from the state general fund, which are your tax dollars, and then fee-funded services, which are people that are using those services and paying for them. That's why the budget appears twice as large as our tax revenues. But the state is in bad shape, but it's not in that bad shape.
I think there are two things we need to do. One, we need to change the culture and the brand of Kansas so that this becomes a state where young people want to stay and want to work. Then I think we need to work with our congressional delegation to put in form, finally, a comprehensive immigration program that allows for folks to come to Kansas legally to provide the labor that we need in our rural communities.
Not beating around the bush. When we're talking workforce for agriculture, we're talking tough jobs. There is capacity at the Cargill packing plant in Garden City right now to be slaughtering more livestock, but they can't do it because they can't find the workers. That industry is hugely important for the state of Kansas. The ag industry is roughly $15 to $16 billion in ag receipts for the state every year. 6.5, 7 billion of that is beef. And the bulk of that's happening in southwest Kansas. We feed them here on the grass, but they end up out there. And we've got to make sure that we have the workforce that's here to make that industry work. And that means a state and an administration that's open. Open not only with our laws, but also in the way that we talk about human beings, so that those communities that are close-knit and tight know that they can come here, they can raise a family here, and they'll be safe here. My brother teaches English in liberal Kansas. He teaches kids that go to school for 8 hours and then turn around and work an 8-hour shift at National Beef. If they are working that hard to improve their families, then we owe them the opportunity to give them a safe passage to something better here in the United States.
Okay, that's certainly a good question that's been going on for quite some time. And what I'll tell you is that, my family, I'm a first generation from Oklahoma, and my family still has a fairly large farm there. And so agriculture is much more than just beef slaughter. Beef is an important product that we have here in the state of Kansas, but it extends past there. And so one of the things that I think is important is, one, in communities that we have agriculture where we're having trouble with getting individuals to be correct workers, is we should be able to come together with each and every one of you and identify, like I did when I was mayor, what are the things that you need and the people that you need, and create an environment where we can train individuals and prepare them to come in to work inside their communities in the working field. Certainly, you know, what's going on, we need to create an environment. We've done that in the past, where I've actually got 33 mayors to sign off and said, at the federal level, don't do anything addressing issues that have immigration issues that's going to affect our economy and affect our communities. We don't want to do that. And so we've got to continue that fight and continue pushing to change those types of federal regulations. But let's diversify what we actually have and bring everybody together to define what we need.
I had the opportunity to speak at Butler County Community College when I was ag-secretary, and you have a nationally renowned livestock judging team here. And I was amazed when I met them. Several of them, I think two have worked for Colorado, one was from Nebraska, some of them were from Kansas, but it's a draw. It's a real economic driver in this community. I understand that. I think two things need to happen. One, we need to uphold our commitments to the Regents institutions as a state that helps keep tuition levels lower. But to your question specifically about the community colleges, I think we are seeing our education system shift in the state of Kansas so that we're preparing children even at the high school level to have a better, clearer idea of what they may want to do to help track them. So that we are responding to employers saying this is what we need in the workforce and this is where we really need people to be coming through to help children avoid getting out of a four-year institution and having $28,000 of debt, which is the average right now, and maybe track more through those community colleges, which would benefit the many community colleges. I think we almost have 27 or so here in the state of Kansas, all around the state, helps the individuals going through your schools, but at our base, we have to uphold our commitments to the regions.
So one of the things that we need to do, and this is kind of leading back to the original questions, I know we went through the line, but the thing is that as you heard me talk about getting individuals trained and educated and going to technical school, but connect technical schools with schools like Butler County Community Colleges or with trade schools to them, to junior colleges. That opens the door to allow them to be able to go on and to move on farther. We owe it to our children, and we start talking about growing our economy here inside of our communities. Well, businesses will come. And the question they always ask is, do you have a skilled workforce? Do you have an educated workforce? And is there a future there for them? And we have to start at the early ages of K through 12 and start educating them. Well, they're not even going to make it through trade school. That's just plain simple common sense if you don't have that. I come from corporate America. I designed the system brackets on that man's shirt that's sitting over there with the Air Force One shirt on. And I'm trying to tell you, if you can't do math, you can't do blueprints, you can't read, and you can't write, it doesn't matter, you're not going to make it there. So that's where we have to start at, and we have to track them through the entire process.
Well, I've served on the Higher Education Budget Subcommittee for the last 12 years, so I've been privy to the conversations and the arguments about increasing funding for community colleges, tech colleges, and of course then you always have the regents coming in with the 6-year or the 4-year institutions. There's a battle there, there's a tension there. I've also seen the trend though of enrollment rates either stagnating or going a little down at some of our 4-year institutions while they're booming in our career in tech ed. As governor, I will convene the Board of Regents and other stakeholders to talk about ways that we might want to be revising the formula about how we distribute higher education funds.
I'm a firm believer in third-party validation. We can all say, oh, you should support me because I'm the best candidate up here, but if you really want to know, I went to Sterling College with the Scribner boys. Ask Dan. He graduated the same year I did, so he can tell you exactly what I was like. He's a Republican and a big rodeo guy, so, but he knows. I care about this state. I love this state, and I'm not going to sit by and watch it continue to go downhill. We have too many family members and years invested, over 150 years invested, to simply watch the state fall apart. So that's why we got into this race. Again, I'm ready to lead on day one. We have the experience. I ran a state agency and was in the legislature, but this is more than simply being ready to lead. This is about the state being ready for the next generation to step up and fix the problems. That's why Katrina and I are the right people to do this job. My website is joshuaswati.com. Go there, visit there. We'd love to have your help and support in this campaign. Talk to us afterward, but thank you for coming out here because none of this works. Our democratic process doesn't work if you're not engaged in it, so that's not lost on us. Thank you very much.
The big question here is, who can lead the city, who can lead the state of Kansas out of the troubling times that we have? And certainly, I have a track record that many of you know, and was served as mayor of the city of Wichita, the largest city, 380,000, during the worst recession. Actually won the election with 69% of the vote. And so the lieutenant governor that I have has the exact same values, and he's Mayor Gardner, former mayor there. And he did the exact same thing, but he led it during the worst recession in the history of this country. This is about providing strong leadership and being able to be a voice for you. You've had mayors that have been in the trenches with you. We know what it's like. We've walked inside your families and your homes. We've listened to you through the difficult times when the federal and the state government has put different provisions against you. The thing is we know what you're going through, and we've helped you through those. And our goal is, and the reason we're running, is to give you that authority back to be able to be successful, but also be there as a resource that works for you. And the only way that you're going to do that is you have to think about Brewer and Morrow as the next governor in the state of Kansas. This is about, we see that there's an opportunity here in the state of Kansas. We see light at the end of the tunnel, but we ask that you help us, Brewer and Morrow, get this train back on the track, and all of us get on board, and let's move it toward the light, because we can have a better future here in the state of Kansas.
Well, this feels a little bit like speed dating. I've got 60 seconds to tell you when they pick me. So I'll cut to the chase. I am tried, tested, and true. Kansas is in a position right now where we cannot afford to experiment. You need to elect someone who has the experience, who has the leadership, and who has the relationships to walk into that office on day one and produce results for the people of Kansas. I've got all of those things, and I can guarantee you that, as they always have, my modern colleagues, my Democrat colleagues, will work with me as governor to solve the problems facing our state of Kansas. I appreciate your support in August, those of you who can, and appreciate your support in November. Thank you.